Hour 2 Overdrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Brian Hayes, Frankie Corrado, Jonas Siegel of The Athletic. Confirm or deny later in the hour. Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst, coming up here in a moment. Steve Phillips later this afternoon as well on Max Scherzer being skipped to start on Thursday due to some soreness in his thumb. Garrett Cole done for the year. Tommy John. How did the Yankees recover from that?
Yeah.
And it's a tough injury news day in sports because just prior to us coming on the air, Tiger Woods issued a statement that he underwent surgery this morning to repair a ruptured Achilles tendon. And
it's over.
I have to think that's the last time we even contemplate the idea of Tiger Woods playing on the PGA Tour again. I mean,
this
is
sick
the
for
thing,
the
guy,
man.
but
like,
how do you recover from all this, Frank? Like the guy, it's such a serious injury too. He'll be 50 at the end of the year. I mean, come on.
And they said, minimally invasive, but we
that.
know what this is. It's another surgery. It's a delicate area. And every year we get the video of Tiger swinging the club at the range, and that's fine. But this guy cannot get around the course. And it's like, as much as the playing ability is not what it used to be, if he can't get around and he's having another surgery, we're done seeing Tiger. We're not going to see him.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that's it. And we've said that before, and maybe it was, some hyperbole or, getting to a point where it's somewhat exhausting, constantly talking about the comebacks and where he's at. And I love the idea of Tiger Woods playing golf. I want to see him play golf. I don't expect him to win anything. He's never going to win anything again on the PGA Tour or in terms of majors. I think that's pretty clear cut. But this is pretty significant. You rupture an Achilles, and I don't know what that means. Minimally invasive. That seems like an oxymoron, doesn't it, Jonas? That
Yeah.
It's surgery, man.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's nothing.
But hey, let me ask you, I don't know if Frankie, are you a huge golf fan as well?
Yes.
Okay, so let me ask you guys. Is any part of you sad watching him these last few years, or is it still a happy experience? Because I could just
watching
imagine
Tiger.
Yeah,
sad.
Okay,
it's 100% sad.
I figured.
Yeah, I look forward to it. If he is playing the rare occasion, I want to watch him. But it's I almost feel like I'm hurt watching it. You know what I mean? I want to enjoy it the same way that I used to enjoy watching Tiger, and I'm watching him not play the way that he would have been accustomed to play. I don't get the feeling that I used to get watching Tiger. It's like this vicious circle where you're watching for the intrigue of it, but you're almost not watching and getting the enjoyment that you used to get watching this guy.
Yeah, and he's different. There's certain athletes that are just different because you have these memories of them being larger than life and iconic and unbeatable and unbreakable. But the truth is with Tiger, this has been going on for a long time.
Yes.
He won that 2008 U.S. Open on one leg. That's 17 years ago.
Wow.
His personal life fell apart 16 years ago. He was dealing with a lot of injuries prior to that. He has not been at the top of his game in almost 20 years. It was really from 97 through 05, 06, I guess up to 08. I think you got to go 97 through 08 where the guy, nothing could touch it. We've never seen anything like it. And then he made returns, and he did win multiple tournaments, and he competed in a bunch of tournaments, and he won the Masters in 2019, which was incredible. That was 6 years ago.
Wow.
That's 6 years ago when he made that kind of miraculous Sunday charge up the leaderboard, and it was incredible to see.
And it gives you the glimmer of hope, right? That 2019 always gives you, or it did anyways, that it's in there. He's just got to be healthy because he can do it. He just, for whatever reason, can't get around. But that's been
it's
eliminated
just asking
now,
too much, man. It's really difficult. It was. It was difficult to watch Brett Favre at the end. It was difficult to watch Peyton Manning. Even Tom Brady, that last year, they kind of snuck into the playoffs. Remember, they got beat up in the playoffs by Dallas, I think it was, and he just looked off and old and slow. And you're like, man, just get out of here. Leave the game. I think we're getting there with Djokovic here. Djokovic is getting injured a lot, and it's is he going to leave matches? Is he going to make it? I don't think he's quite there. I think Djokovic, if healthy, can still be competitive, but he's not a young guy, and it's going to get there. It was like that with Federer by the end. You're you're not going to win anymore.
Yeah.
He's lost some speed, he's lost some quickness, he's lost the aura, and with Tiger, it felt like he kept wanting to go and wanting to compete, and you held him to the standard of his prime, which is completely unfair because it was never going to happen.
Training very different than the average golfer, right? Like he was doing stuff that no one else was doing. So the wear and tear was not just, schedule and golf related. It was the fact that this guy was, banging steel in the gym and doing the Navy SEAL workouts, and no one was thinking of doing that stuff.
No one was doing what he was doing, man. Guys were out there, looking like Ian Woosman and, Craig Stadler. Guys were hitting drivers 240. And this guy came in and just completely revolutionized the sport. And he still holds such a massive place in it where they're trying to broker a deal between the PGA and LIV, and he's at the forefront of that. And now it almost feels like this is going to be it, where he's never going to completely retire. I don't think it's in his nature. I don't think it will happen. He'll try to grind it back and battle back, and who knows, maybe he makes it to the Masters next year at 50 and plays and makes the cut. It's amazing. And I'm pulling for him. I hope that happens. But it's been ceremonial for at least 4 or 5 years now. Mm-hmm. Like where it's just he's more of an ambassador to the sport. He's still an important piece. He's launched his clothing line, which that Carl Phillips kid who just won, he's a Sunday Red guy. Like that's going to be the next wave. Guys on tour wearing his stuff and wearing his clothes, and he's still the face of TaylorMade in many ways. And they got Scheffler and McIlroy and Morikawa. They got all these great players, Brooks Henderson and Nelly. And you watch TaylorMade commercials and stuff. It's still Tiger, and I think that'll be the way he's going to operate forever.
Always.
Yeah, because
always
I want to play what
icon.
Tiger's playing. Like that's never going to stop.
And think about how competitive the sport is now. Like, are we going to have another Tiger? Scheffler is as close as it gets, but it's still not the run that Tiger had when he was in his prime.
Nothing could ever match it, man. Like, the guy was the number one player in the world for how long? A decade or something? Like, it was untouched. Yeah. And now he's had this Achilles surgery, and you really do have to wonder if you're going to see him play again. If you do, what's it going to look like, and when he could possibly return. But the Masters is in less than a month, and he will not be there. Clearly, that's not going to happen. I'm not even sure he shows up for the Champions Dinner. Is he even around? I'm not even sure he'll be there. Here's Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. What's happening, Johnny?
What's up, boys? Now, the question is, quick Jerry's percentages, Hayes, to you.
Yes.
What is the Jerry's percentages that Tiger plays a somewhat regular schedule on the senior PGA Tour?
That is a great question because 10 years ago, he was too cool for that, right? It was like, I'm not doing that. Yeah, I'm not going. No chance. As he's aged and as he has become more and more disconnected with the younger players, I think he actually has been kind of pining for getting out there and playing with Ernie Els and Stricker and all these guys. I actually think there's a chance that happens, Johnny, because of his business obligations, because of what he represents to the sport and his clothing line and all that. I'll say 25% that he plays, 4 or 5 events a year on that tour. I could see that. I could see that still being the case. And I would have said 0% a decade ago. I would have said 0%. No chance he'd ever do that. But he's different now. He's in a different world now.
Competitive fire. He probably wants to play against some of the guys he's got some scar tissue up against. Like, oh, you remember me? I beat you all the time, right? Not like these young guys who don't have that. And he probably wants to play some 700-yard courses, which would be much nicer for his body as well.
But does he take a cart?
So we'll see.
They allow you to take the cart. Why not?
I know, but will he do it? Like, is it a pride thing for him?
I bet he doesn't. Because I think part of his whole thing about golf was he made it physical. Right? Like, one of his advantage was that he was a better athlete. He was in better shape. He was stronger. And I think I don't know. It's a good question, Frank. I mean, his buddies like Casey Martin, remember him, who had the disease and had to take the cart on the PGA Tour, and that was controversial. I just don't think he goes there. He's like, if I'm not good enough to walk, I'm not going to be good enough to play.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I could see him trying to be committed to that. Certainly, early into his tenure on that tour. We got a big one tonight, Florida-Boston, where Marchand was dancing around in morning skate today and speaking with the media. And, I don't know when we're going to see him. I don't know if you've heard anything, MJ, in terms of what, his timeline is, but he's certainly not close to a return. But do you expect that when he does return, like what do you think this is going to look for? What should we be preparing ourselves for if we make the assumption that Marchand will play in the playoffs and Matthew Tkachuk will play in the playoffs for Florida?
It's going to be just another bit of depth for them. I mean, if you look at their first line, like, I don't know if he plays in the first line with Verhaeghe and Tkachuk and Barkov, and if the second line has got Bennett and Reinhart and Rodriguez. I think he's basically an in-and-out guy. Rodriguez and him will flip and flop between the third line and the second line. But he'll bring the energy, the attitude, the experience. And I think as much as anything, Hayes, I would think that Florida, as good as they are and all that they've accomplished, they don't need anything, but having a jolt of adrenaline and energy and personality into a group that's been in the final 2 years in a row. And they've been through the grind, and they've been through some injuries, and they're in a very good spot still. But maybe just bringing that to the mix late and on into the playoffs would also be sort of energizing for the group. I mean, he's still, what does he have, 50 points? It's not like he's not a very good player still. He might not be a 100-point guy. He might be a 65, 68-point guy. That's still really, really good. I'd expect him to play a pretty significant role. And his experience in big moments, he's got lots of success in those times, and I expect him to channel that, as he goes on with Florida.
All right, Johnny, we know the Leafs need Chris Tanev, especially come playoff time. You're going to play Florida. You're going to play Tampa. You're not getting through anyone without him. But the way they're playing right now, as leaky defensively, is that a Tanev thing? Is that a team thing? Should they be able to get by right now playing teams like Utah without Chris Tanev, having a 3-goal lead? How does that whole dynamic play out for you right now?
So if this is all Chris Tanev, then Tanev is woefully underpaid, Frankie.
Right.
If he's the one that
give him the
brings
Norris
it all together, yep, he's the Horse. Forget the Norris, he's the Horse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, of course, they should be able to be better defensively. Again, nobody wants to hear this, but I am somewhat sympathetic to their schedule. Has been grueling, gruesome road schedule. And I think the idea of them being a little bit fatigued mentally, a little bit fatigued physically, played into some not great games against Vegas, Colorado, even San Jose or Utah. So, yeah, I think get home. We'll see what they do against Florida. They got 2 days, rest, reset, massive game at home, full building. We got it on Thursday night. We're doing the game, and we'll take a look at what they look like there, Tanev or not. I will say this, Frankie, for all my suggested that Carlo would be a good fit for Morgan Riley. Not yet. Not just yet.
At some point.
It hasn't quite coalesced the way they, and both him and Lawton both are sort of trying to figure it out on the fly and getting stuck in between. I've seen some of your breakdowns of, when to go, when not to go, when to check, when not to. But they got to be better. They got to be way better defensively. But that's not even a Tanev thing. And I think this is one of the sort of misnomers about the Leafs this year.
Yes.
For the first 20 games, they were unquestionably a much better defensive team than what we have seen in years past. Much better. All the underlying numbers, including goals against, were way down. The last 40 games, they're not that. They're almost what they were in years past. They just don't score as much. They're down to 20, 22 in a lot of the defensive numbers, chances, expected goals, all the other stuff that you love to hear about. They haven't been a good defensive team for months. Not since Tanev's gone out, but since December 1st. So that is sort of the greater concern. Can they refocus, retighten things up like they did the first 20? That's what I'll be looking for the last 20 games of the season, because if not, they're going to be in tough, especially if they don't win the division.
Well, so Mike, they are 26th in expected goals since January 1st, which leads me to asking you about Stanley Cup odds. So Dom, one of the guys who writes for The Athletic, did this breakdown of all the Cup contenders and their chances, and he had the Leafs at 8% to win the Cup. Does that sound right? Too high? Too low? And I'll tell you, Florida is at 15%, if that helps.
When was this article written? Today?
Today.
It was today, given where the standings are today.
It seemed high to me. 8% sounded high.
Well, I mean, the way I look at the league this year, is that there are 3 teams in the Atlantic. There are probably 2 teams in the Metro. There are 3 teams in the Central, and there are probably 2 teams in the Pacific. What's that up to? That's up to 10 teams. 10 teams that could win the Cup this year, I think. That sounds about right.
Yep.
And so to have some proportional, and I don't know, there's some that are a bit better, some that are a bit worse, and maybe the Leafs are a bit worse. So, 8 is probably, you can say it should be 6, you can say it should be 9, whatever. That's around the ballpark because they're one of the teams. Now, I wouldn't say one of the first 4 teams, but they're one of the 10 teams that would have a chance. I think if they don't win their division, that number goes to 3. If they win that division and get to avoid the Florida matchup, that number goes to 13. Like, that's a pretty big swing. 5 points each way based on how they do in the division.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable. And I don't know. I mean, it's so difficult to predict at this point based on injuries, based on how people are playing, And I think a lot of the conversation around the Leafs right now is projecting whether or not certain guys are going to snap out of some of the issues that they're having. And I would look at Austin Matthews at the forefront of that. Like, what is one player worth? A percentage, 2%? What is he worth if he's playing like he did last year when he's rocking? Because I don't know if that's baked in. I guess you'd have to, wouldn't you? Like, if you're getting Austin Matthews who's blending into games, that's a problem.
Well, Hayes,
that's a big problem.
The model, as I understand it, includes past seasons. So it's not really taking into account what he totally is this year, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Well, then I'm not sure what this practice is worth at all. Then, like, what does
I think
that
it's
even
weighted. Mean? I think I read it's weighted more to this year while also factoring in previous years. Yes. I think how it works. But the point remains, Hayes. The point remains. You can talk about Tanev. Goaltenders obviously have to be excellent. This is the reality of when you are the highest paid player in the world. You got to be one of the best players in the world.
Yeah.
Like, that's the responsibility, that's the burden, that's the opportunity, whatever you want to call it. That's the reality. And Austin Matthews knows that, and he hasn't been the best player in the world this year. Now, 100%, the start of his season was health-related, and I don't know where his health is at now. I don't know if he's still managing. Like, he's still exceptional, right? 40 goals, 90 points. It's crazy that's him somewhat debilitated. But in the playoffs, a guy who's one of the better players but can't really dominate his 5-on-5 matchup is not the singular focus of the other team, and it still doesn't matter because he's that good. That's the guy the Leafs need. That's how this team is built. They're not built to say, well, Scott Lawton's here now, but our depth guys will get it done. We just need to saw off the top guys. That's not how this works in Toronto. Their top guys win them games. Will have to win them series. We've said it for years. And I don't know if he feels pressure or not, and maybe there's no pressure, Hayes, if he is in fact hurt, and the organization would know, his back is tweaked and he's dealing with it every day. But he doesn't look the same. He just doesn't look as dynamic. Still excellent, but not the best player in the world excellent. Just one of the good players in the world. And the Leafs need him to probably be a bit better than that to go as far as they want in the playoffs.
And, the fact that Mitch Marner has had the season that he's had while Matthews is having, it has to be called a down year. It is. Factually, statistically, it is a down year. But the fact that Mitch Marner is having this type of season with the contract looming, we haven't talked about it a lot. Obviously, we've talked about it recently. I guess, what does that do for Marner, considering everything that has gone on around him? He's just been so focused, and it's gone so well for him the entire time, and now he's playing, some of his best hockey. You look to these top guys to get you over the hump in the playoffs, and, Marner would be the candidate that you're looking to now to be you are the guy, because the guy that's supposed to be the guy, he's not quite 100%.
Yeah, I think if you were to ask Mitch, you would probably feel that he's that guy. Not necessarily I'm better than Austin, but you should look at me like you look at him. I think that's how Mitch Marner sees himself in his game. And he has that confidence about him. Now, does he carry himself with a little bit more belief, given the year he's had, the production when Matthews is out, the Four Nations situation? All of that should help make him feel great. And just as an aside, I'm sure you guys have dealt with it a lot, Hayes. Mm-hmm. Is anyone mad at Mitch Marner for not allowing himself to get traded? Is that a problem with people, do you think? Like I get it. People might judge him if he leaves, but he invoked a right that was his, that he earned. If you're mad at anyone, be mad at the person who gave him a no-move clause. Don't be mad at the guy who says, I don't want to move, my wife's pregnant, I like playing here, and I want to go to the playoffs here. So I just thought, the sort of consternation, and the fact that Mitch, is not a distraction, not to him. The contract's been out there the whole year for Mitch Marner. Has it been a distraction? Frankie just alluded to it. Not at all. He's been incredibly consistent in blocking it all out. So this isn't going to bother him. It might have bothered him right in the moment. It might have bothered him when he was asked about it after the game in Colorado. But it's not going to linger because he knows whatever he wants to do in his head, he just keeps playing well as he has all year, wherever his head's been at all year. Keep it in the same place. It's been incredible. But I was just thinking, I'm hearing different people sort of ranting and railing. How can you not trade him? People are going to hate him. Do people hate Matt Sundin? Hayes, do you hate Matt Sundin for not allowing himself to be traded out of Toronto? Do you hate Darcy Tucker or Bryan McCabe or any of those Muskoka 5 guys who didn't allow themselves to get traded out of Toronto? It seems unreasonable that you would dislike players for invoking a right that they've earned, especially a guy who's having the best year of his career, and he's the best player on the team this year.
Well, the context is different, as you know. I mean, those guys were being pushed out because they weren't winning, they weren't going to the playoffs, and people wanted to turn over the page and get assets and rebuild and all that kind of stuff. This is a different scenario, and where people are, I think, sensitive to this is that they can't put their finger on whether or not Marner wants to be here long term. And that's the difference. Matt's wanted to be here. So you could hate on it all you want, but you're like, man, Matt just doesn't ever want to leave. And Darcy doesn't want to leave, and Bryan McCabe doesn't want to leave. I think where this is it could get ugly is if it turns out Marner walks, and then at the end he goes, I knew the whole time I was leaving. I had committed to getting through the season, and then I wanted to play somewhere else. That's when it's going to get ugly. But right now, to your point, they negotiated with him. He wants to be here right now. He's playing great. The team's in a very good spot. You mentioned his wife. They're expecting, I believe, in the next few months. That's life-changing personal stuff.
Yes.
He's not uprooting his life to go to Carolina, for 6. That's not reasonable. It's not going to happen.
No kidding. But also, Hayes, if he goes somewhere similar to Rantanen did, go to Carolina, and all of a sudden you got 1 point in your first 7 games. What does that do? There's just a little bit of a thought in the back of people's minds, hey, it might not work in this situation. It worked really well in Toronto. It's not much, but it could cost a little bit at least, and that's somewhat significant for Marner in the grand scheme of things.
In terms of his leverage, you're saying, in contract negotiations?
But Frankie, I think there's zero chance any one of us, for any reason, would wait to get traded to go somewhere and then not have an extension waiting for us. So if he was going to go to Carolina, he's going to sign an 8-year extension the day he gets there. It's not about production. He's getting the number he wants in the spot he wants. It's not about proving himself anymore. And if it was about proving himself, he's not going somewhere as a rental. He's going to be a rental. He's going to be a rental in Toronto if he wants to leave so bad. And he said before the season, if the Leafs wanted him so bad on a contract, they should have signed him July 2nd. They could have done it last summer. I understand why they didn't. I'm not saying they should have. But you can't be like, we didn't want to sign you last summer, but now we want to sign you because you're playing really well. No, well, you've sort of lost that window. Mitch Marner said, I don't want to talk about it during the season, which I sort of applaud because I could never have done that. If I was a player, I'm like, I want to talk about it anytime you're going to give me $100 million. That's when I want to talk about it.
Exactly.
Whenever that's on the table, give me a call, and my phone will be on. But he's just holding true to what he has said all year long. Focus on this year. I'm not going to deal with the contract till it's over, and I'm here to try to win with the Maple Leafs. That feels like a decent response for anyone, especially when you back it up with the game on the ice.
I guess the only thing...
feel like he's whipping boy, and people are so quick to turn on him, and I get it, Hayes. If he leaves and says, I never wanted to stay, people can react that way. But right now, today, I don't think people should be that upset. They should probably be happy a guy wants to stay here and win here.
I think part of the problem, though, Mike, is the messaging has not been clear as that. It has not... They have not come out and said exactly that, I'm not negotiating in the season. What I'm kind of surprised by in all of this, and Hayes and I talked about it yesterday, I think it was, is why the Leafs are so desperate to sign him. Why? Because we had kind of assumed, maybe you want to see what the playoffs are. Are you surprised that they are so eager to get this done, or not? He's just a great player. They just have to keep him.
I mean, I think more the latter than the former. But I think we were all sort of the mind that it's okay if they wait, because if he wants to stay here, then he'll stay here, and he'll stay here because they've had success. And if he doesn't stay, then I get the idea if Rantanen's out there and you can extend him, that's a pretty unique situation. But perhaps if he goes, Jonas, like it forces the Leafs' hand to change anyways. If they lose early in the first round and it doesn't go well, and Mitch Marner decides to walk, that in some ways will forces the hand of what the Leafs probably should do anyways, which is change the group that hasn't really gotten it done. Now, if they do well and he does well, they can still change the group because John Tavares and his $11 million are also off the books. He may come back, but they have two massive pieces there that have flexibility in a rising cap environment to go do some other things if he decides to leave. So I am a little surprised because if you're the Leafs, the number's not going to change. Mitch Marner, whatever, let's say he wants $13 million. Let's just say for argument's sake. If he has 3 points in a 7-game first-round loss or 9 points in a 7-game first-round loss, I would almost guarantee that number is not going to change.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to get a discount because he plays poorly, and he probably won't even, well, I doubt he asks for a premium if he does well. Like, the number is the number he thinks he deserves, and that probably won't change. The Leafs know that. The only fear, I guess, now is as it's gotten closer and he's done so well, maybe we want him back and we don't get him back. And maybe that's the certainty they want. But I don't mind them having an opportunity, whether it's of their own making or it's Mitch Marner's making because he leaves somewhere. If it doesn't go well, then they get to change the team anyways, and that's maybe something they should probably think about regardless.
That always should have been the case. That's what's staggering about this.
Yes.
But now, okay, so if Mitch Marner leaves in the offseason, you didn't have a chance to trade him, and he earned that right, you have to look at it like you're signing UFAs, which is great to go out and say you got all this money to go out and sign.
Yeah.
Who are you signing that's doing what Mitch Marner does in the regular season? Like, are you going to bring in Brock
Frankie,
Besser?
But you could bring in multiple pieces, so maybe you have two $6 million players instead of one.
Sure, it's always good in theory until you can't get Ehlers and you can't get Besser and you can't get Bennett, and you're looking at it saying, well, what do we do now? Like Mitch Marner, he was way better than all these guys, but you're trying to fill the pieces that way. At least if you traded him, which maybe this is probably why they tried to do that, you're getting an equivalent or something close to it back. Like there's no guarantees that you're going to sign that impact in the offseason.
100%. 100%. But if you can make the argument, like, give me Ehlers and Bennett, and I don't even know who the top defenseman out there is, for $23 million instead of Marner and Tavares. You're like, let's have that conversation. I don't know what that looks like, but let's have that conversation. But they're a long ways away from that. But that is the reality, Frankie. Building your team through free agency is never a good idea. That's a finishing touch, not a foundational piece.
But I also think you guys are looking at it like you're looking at it from a forward lens standpoint as opposed to looking at it backwards. And what I mean by that is the idea that Matthews, Marner, Nylander are into year 9 and they've won one playoff round. Name me another team on earth that would allow 3 players to go through 9 years if they lose again in the first round, and the reaction from everyone is, well, you got to keep them for the rest of time. Like, you couldn't possibly change that. I can't just to say it out loud is staggering. It is staggering. And it's not about individual play. It's not about individual, the Mitch Marner, analysis and what he does and what he brings, or Austin or Willie. I'm talking the collection and the team-building philosophy that is in year 9. 9 years is an eternity in pro sports. An eternity. And the idea that this team wants to get out in front of it and lock them up for life, all 3 of them, without any playoff success or any certainty it'll ever change, is insane. It, quite frankly, is absolutely crazy when you just lay it out on the table like that. So you guys are saying, well, how do you replace it? What if this guy doesn't come? I don't care about that. I'm talking about the facts. These guys have been together for 9 years. Maybe it changes this spring, and if it does, we'll have that conversation. And hopefully it does. But if they go out in the first round, I'm sorry. I can't keep having this chat every single year. I don't know how anybody could. I don't know how Shanahan could, Tree Living could. I don't know how MLSE could, Johnny. I don't know how could you? Name me another team on earth that would say, we're just going to keep doing this for eternity, even though it doesn't work in the playoffs.
The Washington Capitals put Backstrom, Ovechkin, and John Carlson together for a decade.
Yeah, but Mike,
never got out of the second round.
They at least won some rounds. Yeah.
I said second round. Hang on.
Yeah.
Jumping down my throat. I'm aware.
Okay.
I'm aware.
Jonas off the top rope, eh?
I knew Mike would know.
Over the top. He couldn't get it out fast enough. Yeah. Oh, my God.
It's just, Mike, I've heard that from the team. They're like, well, Washington and St. Louis. And it's like, well, those teams won rounds. Like, they weren't out of the first round every year. To your point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hear you. Yeah. In Washington, listen, and that clearly that's the hope that it just everything clicks.
That's what you're clinging to.
It's timing too, right? Like the timing of Tree Living coming in, the no movement clause kicking in. Like he wasn't going to do that as his first order of business.
Well, he could have. Let's be fair.
He could have, but is that a reasonable expectation for him?
Yes.
Day one.
Yes.
Because you're missing the point.
Shanahan.
It's not day one. It's a 10-year question, not a 1 year.
Exactly.
They don't point to moments in time. It's more, well, hang on. It's been so long. There's been 30 moments in time where they could have done something different and elected not to. And maybe that's the bigger regret if it doesn't work out.
Absolutely. And I don't believe for a second the GM at any point, whether it's Tree Living, Dubas, Lamoriello, makes that call. It's the guy above him that makes it. The guy at the top makes the big calls. And I don't know. I don't think Shanahan would be willing to stomach that at that point 2 years ago. We'll see what happens come the spring and leading up to July 1st. But, well, it's go time now, Johnny. What do we got? 18 games left, 19 left. They're 2 points back at Florida. They got the Panthers on Thursday. They got Florida 3 more times, Tampa again. They got Colorado rolling through town again. It's going to be a fascinating 2, 3, 4 months coming up. And we'll see where it takes us.
I hope it's 4 months and not 2.
Yeah, exactly. I hope it is. Listen, you know where I stand. I'm pulling for them. I hope it happens, but it doesn't really matter what I want or what I think or what any of us want or think. They've got to pull their weight. All right, Johnny, we'll do it later in the week.
All right, fellas. Have a good day.
Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Drive the built-in Canada fuel-efficient, fun-to-drive Toyota RAV4. Gas or hybrid models available. Visit mapletoyota.com. All right, boys. Confirm or deny coming up. We've got Steve Phillips later this afternoon. Our best bets still to come as well. Frankie Corrado in here. Jonas Siegel of The Athletic. I'm Bryan Hayes. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN Plus.
I can neither confirm or deny that this is in fact a segment.
Austin trades Andrew Raycroft to Toronto in exchange for the rights to Tuukka Rask.
It's been my honor and a privilege to serve as the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs Hockey Club.
It's time for Confirm or Deny.
Do you regret giving all those gentlemen the no trades or no movement clauses?
I can neither confirm or deny that.
I can't confirm or deny.
All right, confirm and deny. Very simple stuff. Statements are made. We either confirm them or we deny them. And I'm seeing reports that Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers are currently negotiating a new contract. And
wow,
it may still fall apart, right? If maybe the money doesn't work. I don't know what Rodgers is demanding. I don't know what Pittsburgh's willing to give him. Very curious to see if Aaron's looking for multiple years. Is it fully guaranteed?
How does that look with Tomlin? That's what I would be most intrigued about, because that guy is nails, and I don't think he's the type to put up with the Aaron Rodgers sideshow.
I don't think he would either, yet he hasn't really faced a guy of this status at that position, right? Like Big Ben 10 years ago, he did his thing, and he was a superstar, and that guy's going to the Hall of Fame. Rodgers is a larger-than-life figure in the sport, and he's playing a position that Mike Tomlin needs in order to actually win. Yeah. So I'm very curious how it will look as well. Let's assume that it happens. Rodgers ends up in Pittsburgh. Confirm or deny the Steelers will make the playoffs if Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback.
They were close this year, weren't they?
They made it. They made it. They had a great start. Remember, they faded late, but they got in and it got ugly. It was ugly in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'll confirm it just based on the fact that there's enough around him that would still make him successful. I think Tomlin's coaching record speaks for itself, but it would be very similar to this year, where it's just you're going to get in and you're not going to do much after that. Like I can't see it having that much upside.
I'll confirm it with a Jerry's percentage of 98%.
Wow.
And I will say so because think of the quarterbacks that they've had since even like old Ben Roethlisberger was not good. And then it's like Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett and like you just think of some of the guys that they've had and they've always been pretty competent even in spite of that. And I don't think Rodgers is like I think he's like part washed, but he's better than Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, like all those other guys. So
yeah, the question is what Frankie brought up. Does Aaron Rodgers come in with his ayahuasca and he's got a whole different aura going on, and does that upset the apple cart enough to throw off the Steelers because they make it every year basically, and Tomlin he always coaches them to 500 or better every single year. But the Ravens aren't going anywhere. I think the Bengals, we'll see with the Bengals, who knows. But if the Bengals can find a way to defend better than they did last year, that's going to be a difficult 2 games that Pittsburgh's going to run into. I wouldn't go Jerry's that high. I will confirm this, but simply because of the defense, Tomlin, the history. But Rodgers, he could easily throw this scene completely off.
Well, do you think he'll come at it different? Like if you're going into that Jets organization, you probably know you can do whatever you want.
Yes.
And didn't he miss like the mini camp?
He did miss a mandatory.
They're not going to let that happen in Pittsburgh.
They're not going to let it. And Pittsburgh's a different town too. Yeah. Very blue collar. Like New York was New York, and they were infatuated with them, and it was the Jets, and they're so desperate. The Steelers aren't desperate. They're a well-run organization that gets to the playoffs every year. Blue collar town. And I also wonder how much gas he has left. He survived last year. Will he do it again? I don't think you can ever guarantee it with a quarterback of that age.
Right? Like this guy's he's one bad step away from hurting something again.
Yep.
Jerry's 68%.
Yeah, I was too high. That's better,
you were
Frankie.
too high. You were way too
overconfident.
I like
68.
That. Confirm or deny, Brad Marchand will re-sign in Florida after this season.
Ooh. I'll confirm that. If they're willing to have him back, I could see him leaving a few dollars on the table to play for the Panthers. You know it's a team that is going to be in the mix, trying to win a Stanley Cup. Your GM has shown you that he's willing to go out and make trades to keep this team right there. The whole living in Florida thing is nice. The no state tax. I mean, you're already there. I could very much see this happening as long as he plays well enough that they want to have him back.
That's the question for me.
Yeah.
Like, you look at it, Florida deserves the benefit of the doubt that they're going to, perform well in the playoffs and everything's going to work out. They played a lot of hockey the last couple of years, a lot of hockey. Matthew Tkachuk, we'll see where he's at. I think he'll return. I wouldn't be surprised if he's 100% in flying, but it's no guarantees. And Marchand is, he's not young. It's a new atmosphere for him. How's he going to fit in? He's coming off an injury. I'm gonna deny this based on the fact that I think if it goes awry, it's easy for Florida to just say we gave it a shot, but we're moving on. You know what I mean? Like we tried it, but we're moving on here. You just didn't fit. We couldn't find the spot, or we didn't look great, or because I think Brad, I think you're right, Frank. He'd be willing to give up a little bit of money to go to Florida, but he's not going to play for $1 million or $2 million.
No.
Well, and Hayes, they have some pretty big free agents that they potentially have to sign, right? They have Aaron Ekblad as a free agent. Sam Bennett's a free agent. So conceivably, maybe they need a center.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
If Bennett leaves, that's a big, big gap they're going to have to fill, right? Like they're going to have to figure out what they do if Sam Bennett ends up walking. So
Would Marchand, because if Crosby stays in Pittsburgh, like if Dubas picked up the phone at the end of the season, free agency is like, why don't you come play a couple of years with Sid? We're going to sign some guys and see if we can make one last run at the playoffs.
I could see that.
Just
I could definitely see that. Yeah, because, Dubas is trying to convince the world that he's going to retool here and get going. right? Like he said that after the trade deadline. They've acquired a lot of picks and some prospects and some flexibility, and now it's his turn to execute the plan to get Sid back in the playoffs.
We always think of Sid going to play with McKinnon. We never thought of Marchand going to play with Sid.
I could see that making sense.
What do you guys think the percentage? I'm hijacking the game.
Yep.
The percentages, Jerry's percentages for Marchand going back to Boston.
18.
Yeah, I was going to say 25%.
Yeah.
30%.
Okay.
I think once you rip the Band-Aid off, you see life differently. And for him as well. He might get, like, today's emotional. He's still in Boston. He's rehabbing. The Florida's playing there. He could get down to Florida, new group of guys, new coach, and just look at it and be like, I got to do something different here too, and
yeah.
So yeah, I'm not convinced he goes back there at all. Confirm or deny, Brandon Carlo will play more minutes per game in the playoffs than Morgan Riley.
Oh man, come on, deny.
That's it.
It's a deny?
That's a deny?
That's an easy deny.
Oh, that's an easy deny?
Yeah, you're looking at
been watching Morgan Riley play this year?
Have you watched Riley play for them in the playoffs? He's been their best player.
He's been very good in the playoffs.
The other thing, you have to factor in with Carlo's minutes right now, number one, he's on their number one penalty kill. He's not going to be on the number one penalty kill when Chris Tanev is healthy.
He's going to be killing penalties.
He will be
Riley
killing penalties.
Doesn't kill penalties. And don't you think the Leafs are going to keep this 5-forward power play thing going all the rest of the way through? And that's where Riley got a lot of his significant minutes. So he's playing essentially 5-on-5 the rest of the way.
Yeah,
Carlo's going to play 5-on-5 plus PK.
Yeah, but when they need a goal, Carlo's not playing.
That's fair.
I think Riley probably ends up around 21-ish, 21 and a half, but maybe even more. In the playoffs, things change, and Carlo's probably more in the 20 range. You guys don't think so?
I don't think it's a clear-cut confirm, deny or confirm.
You didn't how
you jumped on that quickly as if it was a preposterous
you went Mike Johnson. I got to elbow you people's elbow.
Yeah. I don't think it's that clear-cut because, to Frankie's point, Carlo is going to kill some penalties. Mm-hmm. The two of them are going to play a lot of 5-on-5 together. Mm-hmm. So where is Riley going to get those extra minutes?
Second power play.
If he elevates his game the way that he has in the past, then you have to play him more because he has been a playoff performer. He has really flipped the switch in the playoffs. And if he does that again and he shows it early, then that's going to go a long way. But if he continues at a similar level to the way he's been playing all year this year, I think all bets are off. And I think they'd lean into Carlo a little bit
I just
more.
think they're going to need to find a way to generate offense, and they don't have anyone else who generates offense from their defense.
Point.
Now, you would say, he's not generating a lot of offense this year, but he's the best chance of offense from their D.
Well, and then I guess the other aspect of that is, what if they go into a playoff series thinking, man, we got to be strong around our net. We got to weather the offense that is coming to us. And then all of a sudden, Carlo's playing way more because that's his type of game.
Yeah.
And Berube could look at it that way, right? Berube's a different beast, and he looks at the game differently. And, Carlo's the new toy. That's what he is. And you got to give him some time. He's had some issues the first couple of games. Riley has too. I think
same
you
with Lawton. Lawton's still trying to get the hang of things. I saw there was one read there where you can tell he's in the middle. He's like, well, in Philly we would do this, but in Toronto you don't do that. It's
he
part
took
of
a penalty last night that wasn't great. He's trying to be overly aggressive, and the reffing last night was terrible though. It was awful. The Benoit one. What did he get called for tripping? It was horrendous call. last night.
I think that was McBain. He was falling over.
Wheel. Yeah, he blew a wheel. Yeah. All right, we'll continue with Confirm or Deny. We've got Carter Hutton coming up. Steve Phillips, our best bet, still to come as well. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, we sent Al's brother out into the city with another pair of Leaf tickets. You have to guess where he's hiding for your chance to win them. You guys ready for Tuesday's clue?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, OverDrive fans, it's Tuesday, and I'm back with a brand new clue to help you get one step closer to finding out where is Al's brother and scoring yourself a pair of Leafs and Avs tickets for March 19th. Here is your Tuesday clue. This building is rumored to have a ghost roaming its halls. Rumor has it, you might want to stay away from the second floor. Some say the ghost of a former bank teller with dark, long hair roams the halls here.
Okay, there you go. Very mysterious
Should
stuff.
we know this already? Is that a giveaway? I don't know it.
I don't know that story.
Do you guys believe in ghosts?
No.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Why not? I'll give you a believe in
like
ghosts.
what kind though? What are we talking about?
They used
know.
to say that in Utica, when I played there in the minors, there was the Hotel Utica and it was haunted, and they had like barricaded off the top like however many floors because ghosts roamed those, and
they couldn't get past the barricade.
The guests, and
that's always been my
know.
question that needs to be answered. Why would a ghost just say, I'm just going to stay here? Like they're lazy. They don't ever leave.
They're just comfortable there.
They're afraid. They're afraid of leaving their, comfortable spots.
Right. It's like this one floor is where this ghost is, but he'll never, ever leave. He'll be there for centuries, but never think, I'm going to go head outside. Beautiful day out. Go check out what's going on. Go down.
They don't know outside. That's not where they. That's not where they used to. I got a thing for Jonas. You could do an article on this.
Yeah.
Okay. If Marner walks in the off season, you got to look at all the UFA players.
Frankie,
you got to puzzle together the 12 or 13 or 14 million dollars.
Yeah.
The perfect off season if he walks.
I have a Google Doc already started.
You've already written that.
Yeah.
Look at you. Look at you, the ghost of 24-25, the Maple Leaf season. It resides in your Google document.
Brock Besser, Pius Suter, and a 4th-round pick.
It's tough.
All right.
It's tough.
All right. Tune in tomorrow for another clue. And the first caller through on Friday with the correct location wins a pair of tickets. Leafs Avalanche, March 19th. Finals Brother brought to you by McAlpine Ford in Aurora. Our family, the Ford family, and you. Final hour coming up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.